Under the scorching Texas sun, the wind moves like whispers through the mesquite trees. Dust carries echoes of commands once barked in German and laughter from men who weren't supposed to be there. During World War II, America built more than 80 prisoner-of-war camps across its heartland, but few remember what happened inside them. Here, in the forgotten edges of Texas, fences once divided freedom and captivity. Behind barbed wire, thousands of Nazi prisoners labored under American watch, cutting timber, tending cotton, and staring out at a land that felt like another planet. Locals thought the war was far away, but its shadows had already crossed the ocean. It was supposed to be temporary, a humane containment far from the battlefields of Europe. But as the years passed, something began to feel wrong. Stories emerged of strange disappearances, of prisoners who vanished without trace, and of records that simply stopped. Even the guards seemed uncertain. They joked about ghosts and desert wanderers who walked out of camp and were never found. But beneath their laughter, there was unease. Something, or someone, was missing. The war ended. The camps emptied. And yet, decades later, Texas locals still talk about the ones who never came home, neither to Germany nor to the grave. What happened to them? And why does no one seem to remember their names? During the height of World War II, Texas became home to the largest network of POW camps in the United States. From the pine forests near Huntsville to the dry plains of Hereford, the state held nearly 80,000 captured German soldiers. They were young, many barely 20, shipped from North Africa and Europe to this strange, sun-baked land. To most Americans, they were enemies. To farmers, they were labor. But to the War Department, they were secrets. Each camp was its own world, fenced, guarded, and largely unrecorded in public archives. Officially, the camps were well run. Prisoners received rations, pay, even education. Yet whispers among local workers told a different story. Men beaten in the fields, trucks leaving at night, and names quietly erased from the rosters. No one asked questions. The war gave everyone an excuse not to look too closely. But when peace came, not everyone went home. The official count didn't match. Files were sealed, transferred, or lost. In small towns near abandoned barracks, farmers still remember the accents, the music, the German songs that echoed across the plains. And they remember the sudden silence, the day the singing stopped and the desert swallowed their visitors whole. The first vanishing was dismissed as an escape. One prisoner, a mechanic from Hamburg, reportedly slipped through the fence near Camp Hearn in 1944. Guards tracked his footprints through the sand, and then nothing. No body, no clue, just wind and open land. Soon, more cases followed. At Camp Swift, near Bastrop, 3 men vanished during a work detail. In Hereford, an entire truckload of prisoners reportedly never arrived at their destination. The Army insisted they were repatriated early. Locals whispered something else entirely. Some claimed to see columns of trucks driving west at night, toward old oil fields and abandoned ranches. Others spoke of unmarked graves in the desert, hidden beneath layers of caliche and silence. The official narrative refused to budge: escapes, errors, or confusion during transfer. But behind the facade, there were patterns. Missing records, falsified names, and signatures that didn't match. If these men truly escaped, where did they go? And if they didn't, who decided their fate? Rumors grew darker after the war. Declassified memos hinted at psychological observation units hidden among the POW network. The U.S. Army's intelligence branch, and perhaps other unnamed agencies, may have used certain camps for covert experiments. Texas, with its isolation and endless land, was perfect. Prisoners became data points in studies of reconditioning, loyalty, and propaganda resistance. Some were said to have volunteered. Others weren't given the choice. One former guard, decades later, told a reporter he'd seen things that didn't feel military. Strange medical units arriving without insignia, prisoners taken away for weeks, and returning changed, silent, unrecognizable. No documents confirm this. But certain records from 1944 to 45 list unexplained transfers to unknown destination. Others show sudden deaths from illness with no burial locations noted. Did the U.S. test the minds of its enemies on its own soil? Or did something far more disturbing happen behind the fences of Texas? In 1946, when the camps closed, the Army began its repatriation project, the return of prisoners to Europe. Millions of pages of paperwork moved through warehouses and offices. Somewhere along the way, Texas files began to vanish. Researchers decades later found gaps, months missing from logbooks, whole shipments of documents never cataloged. Camp Hearn's detailed daily reports stopped abruptly in spring 1945. Camp Swift's rosters were rewritten. Camp Hereford's maps disappeared entirely. When local historians asked for answers, officials said the papers had been destroyed due to age. But other files from the same era survived. Why not these? Some believe the records were deliberately purged to conceal the true number of prisoners who never made it home. Others think they were hidden to mass cooperation with Nazi scientists later absorbed into American projects, men who might have been relocated rather than repatriated. Whatever the reason, the silence in the archives echoes louder than any written confession. Drive through central Texas today, and you'll still hear fragments of these stories. Old farmers remember the strange days when German men worked their fields, laughing and singing under the hot sun. They were polite, hard-working, even kind. Many left behind gifts, carvings, paintings, letters. But then, as suddenly as they appeared, they were gone. Only a few locals ever saw the convoys that carried them away. One rancher near Bastrop swore he found a mass of unmarked mounds in 1946, fenced off and guarded for weeks before being bulldozed flat. Another spoke of trains that passed at midnight, loaded but silent, heading toward the desert's edge. Some dismissed these tales as exaggeration. Others believed the truth lay beneath their feet, in the soil that once held barbed wire and blood. Are these merely memories of wartime chaos, or fragments of something far more intentional? Officially, all prisoner transfers were logged and documented. Yet among the surviving records, historians have found discrepancies. Trucks that departed but were never checked in, trains that vanished between stations. One report from July 1945 mentions Vehicle Column 13B, leaving Camp Hearn en route to Fort Bliss, never arrived. The manifest listed 28 German POWs. No follow-up report exists. Civilian workers recalled convoys heading west into the desert, past the oil fields of Midland and Odessa. The routes made no sense, away from military posts toward emptiness. Some speculate these convoys carried high-ranking prisoners or scientists under secret orders. Others believe they transported something less human, perhaps bodies. Whatever their cargo, they never came back. The desert keeps its promises. It swallows what it's told to forget. After the war, America was busy rebuilding. Few wanted to remember the enemy, let alone their corpses buried under Texan dust. The public focus shifted. Victory parades, new suburbs, the rise of the atomic age. Meanwhile, those who had guarded the camps were ordered to stay quiet. Many signed lifelong confidentiality agreements. The official stance was clear. Nothing happened that wasn't routine. Yet, over time, silence breeds curiosity. Journalists in the 1970s and 1980s began to dig, uncovering faint trails of missing men, censored reports, and strange property deeds linked to former military sites. Still, the government response remained the same: denial, redirection, destruction of remaining files for storage reasons. Was this patriotism or protection of a darker national memory? Locals tell stories of strange figures wandering near old campsites, pale men in torn uniforms speaking German into the wind, nighttime lights flickering among the ruins of barracks long since reclaimed by weeds. In the 1950s, one sheriff's deputy swore he found German dog tags half buried near a creek, dated years after the war's end. How could that be? Some say these are just ghost stories, the South's way of coping with guilt and mystery, but others believe the land remembers. That energy lingers where truth was buried. Visitors to Camp Hearn today report an eerie quiet, as though the place is waiting for its story to be told. waiting for the missing to be counted. Are these hauntings just echoes of imagination, or reminders that history never truly ends? Another theory suggests the missing men never died. They were exchanged, quietly traded between powers for scientific knowledge, intelligence, or political leverage. Operation Paperclip, launched in 1945, brought hundreds of former Nazi scientists to the United States. Most names are known: Werner von Braun, Arthur Rudolph, Hubertus Strughold. But could others have come under different names, through Texas rather than Germany? If so, it would explain the erased rosters, the falsified death reports, the convoys to nowhere. The disappeared may have been reborn, under new identities, hidden within America's growing military-industrial complex. But at what moral cost? How many vanished not because they escaped, but because they were needed? In the 1990s, a few surviving guards began to speak. Their voices trembled with age and fear. One man described unofficial executions after violent incidents. Another recalled special transfers of prisoners considered too dangerous to release. Some told of isolated outposts, improvised detention barns miles from any road, guarded by plainclothes men who never gave their names. Each account ends the same way, a warning not to dig too deep. They didn't want those men found, one said. Not by us, not by anyone. Their confessions came too late to confirm. Most died before their stories could be cross-checked. Their families refused interviews. What did they know? And what still sleeps beneath the Texas soil? In recent years, a handful of archaeologists have tried to find the truth, scanning abandoned campgrounds using ground-penetrating radar on former POW lands. In 2017, one team near Hearn detected anomalies under a restricted area, rectangular voids roughly the size of graves. Officially, the site was dismissed as a construction dump. No excavation was permitted. Similar finds occurred near Hereford. Old tools, buttons, and fragments of uniforms beneath layers of soil. All consistent with German issue, none logged in official inventories. Each discovery adds another fragment to the puzzle, but without access to government land, the truth remains sealed. Perhaps it's not what's missing from the ground that matters, but what's missing from the records above it. Freedom of Information Act requests have been filed for decades. Each time, the response is the same: redacted pages, missing attachments, no responsive documents found. Researchers who push too hard receive quiet warnings or are denied further access. The reasons: national security. But how can 80-year-old war records still threaten national security, unless they hide something more than paperwork? Perhaps it's not just about vanished prisoners, but about what America became by making them vanish. If even part of the legend is true, if men were buried, hidden, or erased to serve a greater cause, then Texas holds one of the darkest secrets of World War II. It challenges everything we believe about the good war. It forces us to ask whether victory always comes clean. Maybe the real battlefield wasn't overseas, but right here, in the moral decisions made under desert suns, behind fences that kept truth as captive as the men they held. The records are gone. The witnesses are dead. But the questions remain, echoing across the plains like the last cry of a forgotten prisoner. Today, the remains of those camps lie scattered. Rusted gates, concrete slabs, and the ghostly outlines of barracks lost to time. Travelers pass without knowing the ground's memory. When the wind shifts, it carries faint echoes. Boots on gravel, a song half remembered in a language that once belonged to the enemy. Somewhere in those vast Texas plains, the truth sleeps. Not lost, just waiting. Waiting for someone to listen again, because history doesn't disappear. It hides, buries itself under sand and silence, until someone dares to unearth it. History doesn't vanish. It gets buried. Subscribe for more Forgotten Frontiers.